And good morning from Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, 60 miles up the river from Washington, D.C. We're delighted that you've joined us for day 2 of Targeting Metabesity. And what a great day we had yesterday, but another spectacular day coming up. Joan, so good to have you with us, and you've already made great contributions to the meeting.
Well, I'm very excited that today I'm going to be moderating 2 sessions. One is on targeting immunosenescence, and this is the decline in function of the immune system that occurs as we age, and the importance of this has been highlighted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's going to be so exciting to hear our next panel with Bill Hazeltine talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and lessons learned. And then I'm also going to be moderating a session on neurodegeneration, and of course, the decline in function of the aging brain is of critical importance, determining how we might be able to stop that decline in function. So really looking forward to those panels.
Indeed, as am I. And Thomas, you led a spectacular session on national policy yesterday. My head was whirling as
well, first of all, when you have a panel of that caliber, speakers, they were amazing. But I do think that they put things in context, and they had rich content, a dense content that gave us lots of material. I have a pet peeve about sessions where they talk about stuff and then it just sort of drifts away. They actually came up with very useful, tractable observations. So it was great.
Yeah, and more to come there. And late breaking news, we have a spectacular session coming up at 4:15 today. This is a blockbuster session that really continues our discussion about biomarkers and clinical endpoints. Force of Nature near Barzilai is going to be leading that. And this is going to feature an update from AFAR, the American Federation of Aging Research, which has been a long time close collaborator of the conference, and NEAR in particular was from the beginning with us in London and has been with us all along the way. We're delighted that he is able with his colleagues to put that great session on. And I just think our audience can't get enough of how we're going to get to endpoints and biomarkers to facilitate the development of regulated products for achieving healthy longevity. So Joan, that's yet another great facet of this conference. We get into the weeds in some subjects, but ones that are particularly important for what you're doing, actually.
Yes, and I think there was a great session yesterday on biomarkers led by Steve Krasinski. And I think an important lesson for us is that if we want a surrogate biomarker, we're going to have to develop therapies that actually show clinical benefit that we can use then to validate the biomarker. So a lot to be done, but really exciting.
Right. And Thomas, as Joan said, we've got just an amazing mega session coming up that Bill Hazeltine has put together. And boy, that is something.
I'm really looking forward to it. Bill, of course, is a national living treasure in terms of healthcare. And he's pulled together a dream team kind of panel. They're first going to tell us, and I want to be sure I'm up to date on this, the latest learnings about the COVID pandemic in year 3. And you see you hear news reports, you read stuff. I think Bill's an authoritative source. He's done all the reading and thinking for me, so I'm looking forward to that. But then it was another insight for me that in one of the preparatory telecons for this, he noted that we are witnessing the birth of a brand new chronic disease, long COVID. That's not something that happens every day, every year. So we want to learn about that. And then finally, to understand what some of the lessons of the pandemic may be for the global pandemic of chronic diseases. And hopefully the public-private partnership that the world exhibited in addressing COVID will be something that we can bring over to chronic diseases.
Yeah, such a great point. And this just underscores the intertwined relationship of COVID with chronic diseases, both in predisposing and then in the complication
Can I give
that
a shout out
ensues.
to Doug Wallace? Yesterday's session, he was in our mitochondria session, but he has done very recent research where he's demonstrated the insidious effect of the COVID, of the SARS-CoV-2, the virus, against the mitochondrion. And it's my lay perspective. I meant to ask Doug whether this was being completely reductive or misleading, but to me, it was kind of like how the virus is helping to age the mitochondrion, the cell, and the host.
Yeah.
And that's why long COVID seems to be so insidious.
That's right. And so starting with the mitochondrion and then going to cell signaling. And this is really what you're doing. Joan, you're at the heart of seeking to improve immune resilience using a deep mechanism that could hit across multiple chronic diseases, but first and foremost in helping to prevent upper respiratory viruses and, we think, COVID.
Right. So, the immune system does decline in function as we age. And one of the aspects of that decline in function is a decrease in antiviral immunity. And that's one of the reasons COVID is so severe in older adults. But it's interesting, it's many respiratory viral infections are severe in older adults, and many of them probably have long-term sequelae that we just haven't paid a lot of attention to. So I think this whole intersection of aging and viruses and the impact of viruses on older adults is an unexplored and really important area.
I think Sarah made the point that resilience is where he's kind of more and more focused. Is it just my impression, or is the immune resilience is pretty hot? And I don't know, the things can break down in lots of ways, but if the immune system breaks down, is that like 40 or 50% of it of aging, or can you comment?
Well, you'll hear later today in the immunosenescence section, there's wonderful work that Paul Robbins will talk about, showing if you just age the immune system in a mouse, all the other organ systems start to age. So it clearly plays a fundamental role.
Yeah.
So I think, again, a lot to learn. But I think the other aspect is when older adults get respiratory infections, they don't have the resilience in their whole body to sort of compensate for that infection. And they tend to have increased all-cause mortality. So as you can see with COVID, the COVID, even if it doesn't kill them itself, it sort of triggers a decline in other organ systems that causes death.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And the immune system is just so basic, and it brings in the microbiome and our relationship with it, how it contributes largely to our resilience. Sometimes can be a problem, but it just gets more and more interesting when you look at even the maternal, the birth impact of the microflora in the birth canal, ultimately having a major impact on the immune settings and ultimately resilience in the future.
Right. Absolutely.
And we've been planning, talking about having such a session, and we didn't have one this year. Maybe next year's, and we're going to have a specific focus panel on the microbiome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important and so fascinating. We've got many people in our community who are experts and can speak to that. But we'll come back to the session in a moment. We do want to talk about the name change of the conference. As you've heard, we've been talking about a name change, and you've been looking at it. We are changing the name from targeting metabesity to some variation of targeting healthy longevity. The name metabesity has served us well, but it's also caused some confusion. Some people have thought we're talking about a grander form of metabolic syndrome or a form of obesity.
Uber obesity.
Yeah, but no, that was never the intent. Metabesity is the constellation of chronic diseases and cancer and the aging process, all which we believe can be targeted by going after the shared root causes. And so that concept holds, but what this conference is about is truly much more than metabolics for one thing. It's signaling of different kinds. It's immunology, but then it's public policy. It's the whole gamut of a broad community of ethicists, economists, scientists, policymakers, elected politicians pulling together on this moonshot project. So Metabesity sort of pins us down in a niche and implies that
I'll be honest with you, I'll miss it a little bit.
Well, we will.
Very distinctive, but you're right. People don't know. Some people did not know what we meant by the term.
Yeah. So we're going to really stress the objective of what this conference is about, and we like to think that we are unique in the very broad scope, ranging from the very basic science to the hard public policy decisions and implementation that is so challenging for what is truly one of the grandest moonshots of humankind. Thomas?
Well, the mission of the Kitalys Institute certainly won't change. This conference, the Metabesity conference, now the Targeting Healthy Longevity conference, will continue to focus on accelerating the translation of both natural science and social sciences for promoting public health, the translation into public health to preempt chronic diseases and to extend healthy longevity for all. So there's definitely a social aspect to this where it's not just healthy longevity for the wealthy, but for all, to make a difference in public health. And in addition to the conference, the annual conference, we produce webinars. So we invite you to check out kitalys.org, our website, for additional standalone webinars on the topics of interest here, as well as projects, initiatives where we are trying to look at the kind of legislation that might be useful for promoting and accelerating healthy longevity, as well as working on the regulatory side, which is something that we have a special interest and expertise in.
Right, Joan.
Oh, I put in a plug for this conference, of which I am not a part, and I'm just a fan of this conference. And I was thinking about this last night. We're in an area of science, which is targeting aging biology, that has such profound impact beyond the actual science. It has a profound, since everyone on the planet ages and develops diseases of aging. If we're able to target these diseases with this fundamental biology, it has an enormous impact, not just on the health of the population, on economies, on social systems, retirement. The impact of this science is so big that it is really important to have conferences like this, where we do have policymakers, we do have regulators, we have a broad swath of experts weighing in on how we move this forward, how we convey the impact of this science. And I think it's really exciting, and you guys have done a wonderful job organizing it and getting great speakers.
Well, Joan, thank you. You've done a very important part of the conference today and previously. We really look forward to your coming back. And gosh, we want to make sure you succeed in what you're doing.
I can use all the help I can
Well,
get.
you've got it. We will do everything we possibly can to support your efforts. But
And by the way, no disrespect, Harper's Ferry is amazing. I'm hoping that this is the last year of the last couple of years under the pandemic for our doing this on a virtual
glad you
basis.
mentioned that, Thomas, because we think we're going to be back. Well, I think we are going to be back in Washington,
Columbus
D.C.
Day,
It's no
October
longer
9th.
Columbus Day.
Oh,
It's
sorry.
Native American.
Native American Day,
Yeah, but that holiday in October has sort of anchored our
day one of the
our
conference.
day one, and that's to help get government folks, FDA, NIH, and other executive branch organizations to support the conference. So we'll be doing that. We may come back to Harper's Ferry because it's a great place to be. And Joan, you might attest to that.
It's beautiful.
You heard it right here, folks.
Our Chamber of Commerce is picking that up. And we hope that there will be a facility here where we could actually have a Davos-like event that would allow us to gather in a relaxing setting, but one which would be high
Is that
powered.
Bill Hazeltine? Do you see Bill?
It is, and I think we're 10 seconds away from his session. And if by small chance you don't recognize the name Bill Hazeltine, check his biography out. It's just amazing. He is an icon and legend in his own time. So, Bill, it's time for you to come on. We can't thank you enough for putting together a spectacular panel.